start with asking each of you some questions. Probably pleasingly for you, Tony, it seemed that the other three speakers, at the heart of all of the examples they gave was some sort of consumer insight. And you kicked off by asking us questions around insight. Can you give us an idea of the differences that you discovered between the consumers globally? Because it seems to me, what's discovered about running an Axe ad in Japan may not be the same as what you find in running a priority club for a hotel group in Japan. So, were there differences that you could highlight? Are there things that you can say work well in one country that don't work somewhere else because of cultural differences?
Yeah, I think there are cultural differences that I touched on in terms of certainly some of the Asian markets, the interest in gaming and spending time on mobile internet that way, and cultural observation about the guys in the United States, guys and girls in the United States, kind of waking up to email and going to sleep to an email just about, and being constantly engaged with email as the primary form of using the internet throughout the day. Also, then I think that then the technology and different kind of contexts for technology come to bear as well. So I think clearly in our research of the markets that we covered, India was quite an outlying market in terms of the lower levels of penetration, and therefore the differences of opportunity that presents relative to, in the sense that what in the US is seemingly a perfect storm of a very high number of Wi-Fi hotspots, a very high preponderance of unlimited data in the packages that are out promoted to people via the networks, and a great degree of innovation and marketing energy going into people selling people new handsets. So I think in a sense, the answer to your question, the short answer is every market is different.
Yeah.
But there can be similarities drawn in similar markets. So I think in Europe we'd probably see a greater amount of similarity in terms of technology and consumer kind of cultural observations that you might want to make.
Adam, slightly related to that, it seemed to me that the examples that you were giving were not unusually driven by both consumer insight and some great clever creative, which is, of course, what as an agency guy you're going to say, well, that's behind every campaign. But how are you getting the brands that you work with to accept that they need to integrate mobile into the campaigns that they're getting from the start, rather than adding, as somebody else said, as a bolt-on that they're going to do this later on?
Yep. I think the first thing is we have to assess their relative tolerance for risk. From a client's perspective, jumping into mobile is something that they probably want to do, aren't quite sure how to. So we have to hold their hand a bit in terms of navigating how to do it effectively, I suppose. But I guess relatively speaking, it again, to Tony's point, differs. I mean, it will differ greatly depending on clients and the category that you're in. I think the fundamental starting point is if you understand their threshold for risk, from that you can start to develop cultural insights, trends, those types of things, which can, I guess, in a way, whet their appetite for how this can be integrated. But the briefing, I would say, is the most critical part. So
how do you bring people back from this? What I hear from lots of agencies as a starting point is a marketer walks into your office and says the words, "I need an iPhone app." So how do you bring them back to we need to start with insight and a great idea?
And I think that goes back to what I was saying with the purchase funnel. So we have to ask them what what their objective is, what they're trying to achieve, what the insight is. To Tony's points, if they come in and say we want an app, we'll challenge that and say, are you creating an app for the sake of an app, or are you creating an app to create engagement? In the case of Marco, to drive people into your hotels. And without that sort of fundamental understanding, it's just going to be an app that sort of sits there and dwindles.
Yeah. So, Roy, you said right at the start of what you were saying was that actually you don't see your agencies bringing you mobile as an answer very often to do it. So, what's your view? Is it should this be led by clients going to their agencies and saying, we want you to find a way to use mobile because we've got the insight? or are you expecting agencies to play a much greater role in providing the insight for you?
I think both parties play that role, and I think it's up to the relationship to work out which side wants to push the innovation. For me, the challenge comes back to audience and whether the audience is actually ready. And I'm talking about my audience in terms of business to business, not a consumer audience now. Whether they're ready to take my advertising messaging on the mobile platform. When I compare the mobile platform, when I index mobile as a communications platform relative to TV or to print or to out of home, it doesn't index particularly well. People don't yet want advertising on their mobile phone.
But did your consumers, presumably the people at Wimbledon, did not consider the app that you gave them to be advertising?
Indeed, and there's the paradox in that when you get it right, you can actually get incredible levels of engagement with people. But it's about working out how to get it right. And I think we're in a market that's, I think, very infant in its state. Very few people inside, I think, client organisations understand much about mobile, and there are generally, in my observation, specialist groups in all of our agencies. So it's not in the heart of what they do. There's a team of people that do mobile, and I think until it reaches a stage of maturity in agency and in client, where we both just accept that the audience is ready, and we've got a mechanism which creates or generates the creative idea on an ongoing basis, then the market won't mature. It won't move from being great fun and great innovation in many instances to just being the norm. And I think there's maturity to happen in terms of people taking the risk. I mean, to be honest, it's a measured risk because there's not really a risk. I mean, in terms of the level of investment that you need to make to do something clever in mobile, it's not particularly expensive. It just needs a good idea, and I think that's the challenge, is working out, is that idea good or bad? And,
right.
and until you try, you don't really know.
So, Marco, in developing what seems to be both a fantastic website and a fantastic app, apart from the insight and the great idea, what are the other critical success factors you found in making those things work? Because they clearly do.
I think first of all is user experience. So if you're able to provide a user experience and also related to the market you're resonating. So if it's UK or US, even if it's to English-speaking countries, you need to find those key areas that can bring incremental revenue for us, because we resonate with revenue. But also, I would say it's also the being. Don't rush and try to understand what's your strategy, where you want to go, and build, as we have done, like wait a little bit and build a strategy for a three-year strategy, not just a short-term strategy. So have your goals really clear, and I think that makes a difference. For us, the fact that we actually launch a PCR application, so just for our loyalists and not for a wider audience, that was a really critical success factor, I would say.
Okay, we had a question just down here. Did you want to still ask? If you can tell everyone your name and the company, and then ask.
Hello, hi, I'm Nick from Tiger Spike. So one of our key issues, so let's take some of the apps we've done before, people like Time Out London or Telegraph iPad, is that it's fairly easy right now to create differentiation in the marketplace for our customers. So as a design and development company, we continually ask about, well, it's easy now for, say, a hotel group or IBM or to cause like Tesco's to get to the top of the charts, but because not many people have a presence. What's your advice to people about what's going to happen in, let's say, a year's time or 18 months' time when the marketplace is going to be crowded, and how you should be creating a difference for your strategy in what will then be a crowded marketplace?
Who was the question aimed at? All four of them, or anyone in particular?
It was nodding most.
Yeah, I'll start with that one. I think, given where apps are going, we're already in a crowded marketplace, especially for a commodity brand or whatever the case is. I think increasingly what's going to be important is the strategy around how we promote those apps and what we do with them, and that's why, for me, it's not just good enough to have a great idea or a good app. It's how you promote it, and it's everything that goes with it. So if you have a good app, that will only get you so far. If it's subpar, there's a new stat out now that 50% of consumers are deleting apps within the first 2 weeks. So if that app doesn't deliver, you're kind of screwed right off the bat. Beyond that, if your app is decent enough, you have to make sure that you're sweating that asset as hard as possible. And for us, that comes down to the strategy around it. And the Axe case study is a great example of how they use TV to promote an app. It's not just something that can live on its own legs anymore.
I'd echo that. I think the two examples that I showed, which have success against them, are both successful because it wasn't just about the mobile component. It was about the way we drove traffic to that particular destination. We've just launched another one on a BlackBerry called IBM Extract, and it's targeted towards CIOs. Because getting information out of IBM is actually quite challenging if you're a CIO, bizarrely. I'm one of our target audiences, but we find it hard to talk to them. Because we've got so much to say, that's our excuse. So we've created an app for a BlackBerry, which basically puts them in control of our information. And the promotion for that is actually in partnership with a media partner, and the online creatives that have actually been established, and you might actually see this if you went to a few of the sites at this point in time, is actually doing a nice little animation of actually pulling all of the data off of the page you're looking at and putting it into the display advert. And when you click on the display advert, you can then download the app to your phone. But it is all about how do you actually create the awareness of what you're doing in the full media space, not just in the app marketing space.
Another question at the back there. Can you hold your hand back up? Just there. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Berenice Callan. I'm from GetJow. We're the second largest app store in the world. Basically, I had a question for Tony. So when you pulled up one of your slides, you said when you asked consumers whether they wanted to use, sorry, can you hear me? Whether you wanted to use mobile internet, or you said they want to use the normal internet, and they said, a third of them couldn't live without. Do you know what the consumer demographic breakdown was for that at all? Was it that target market?
Have you got any more specific questions you could ask?
I think we can confidently say that it was a third of people said if given that choice, they'd choose the mobile internet and they'd live without their PC-based internet. And then, yes, I shared the notion that it was about 50% of the people we termed innovators who also felt the same way. So I think the direction of drift will be that it will be the most innovative, the most early adopting types that would go for that. But equally, it may be true of youth audiences in terms of the degree to which social networking might be a big motivator for that, and the distinction that I drew about the in-home use varying from PC to mobile internet base is characteristic of what people are using it for. And I think social communication, social networking, etc. would be and the primary users of that would be a ripe audience for making that choice. But I can dig back at the ranch. I can dig out some profile data for you.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Do we
Can
have
I just have a quick? Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm just going to take on.
Which day of the week they took the survey on?
I just had a quick take on. Just want to say that we did a poll of 12,500 consumers at GetJow last year, and we had that 74% of consumers had already downloaded an app that had advertising in it, and 79% of them said that they would actually download another app with advertising, but it had to be a good enough app. So just thought I'd bring that up.
I can go back to the ranch and also share with you some data. We asked questions about whether people would, there are plenty of free apps around. Would they pay for an app, and would they pay to have an app that didn't have advertising in it? And there was strong appetite for certain kinds of apps and certain consumers to say yes, they'd. I think 40% of consumers said they'd pay to not see advertising in an app. But it kind of, almost like eventually you get to the "it depends" part of the conversation.
Downloaded apps, all our apps on the store are free. So.
Right, we got time for one more question before we move on. It's just
sorry, I just wanted to respond to the point about apps carrying advertising, and I think that's an increasing. We'll see that increasingly from a media standpoint. It's very easy to spend advertising dollars. Very easy. The trick is, people will accept it as a free app, but will they actually click on the advert in the app?
Yeah.
And if people don't engage with the advertising, the model won't work. And that's so it's very easy to develop that concept that people will pay for free apps, but it isn't necessarily going to turn the market around.
So I got time for one more question. Some in the audience. Yes, to that one.
Thanks. Simon Clark from Eagle Eye Solutions. When you say consumer engagement, do you mean some kind of transactional context between or resulting from receiving an app, possibly with advertising on it, and then the consumer or perhaps even the business moving towards purchase or some other form of exchange subsequently? Would that be your maturing marketplace?
Simon? Who's
Roy Lee. Sorry.
I think that there will always be two types of engagement. There will be products and services which are purchased through a mobile device, and you could drive that from an advertising standpoint quite effectively. And I think there are even some of the products and services in the IBM portfolio that would lend themselves to that type of engagement, particularly as I look at the small and medium business market space. But there are parts of my portfolio which there's no way there'll ever be that type of engagement. A System Z, a high-end computer which might cost several million, isn't going to be sold on a mobile phone, I don't think. But I can engage with the audience through mobile and actually improve my reputation, give them all of the information that they may choose to download about the performance of that said piece of equipment. There's a long way through the sales and marketing process that we could take somebody using mobile technologies. I think that to the point made, the touch points are many and varied. Part of our challenge, I think, as marketeers rather than just specific advertisers, is how we manage that engagement through that cycle, and actually recognising the various touch points that we have and what that touch point actually means, whether it's actually somebody just kicking a tyre because they've got some time, or whether they're really engaged and whether they're really ready for the next level of conversation.
I think that's a fantastic note to finish on. So thank you for that, Roy. Please join me in thanking the four panellists: Marco De Rosa, Adam Dyer, Roy Lee, and Tony Weaver. I'd also like to end just by saying thank you to our sponsors, who have been Bloomberg and AdMob. I see that the bar is open at the back because I can see, and the staff are waiting there to serve you drinks. Thank you all for coming. I hope you've enjoyed it. We've certainly enjoyed the experience of working with the IAA, and we look forward to working with them again next year. Thanks.